Yeah, so let us consider now the special situation where the Banach space is given by the continuous functions on some set. In general, this set could be a compact set, but maybe then we would have too much compactness around. So let us be specific there and just take the interval, the closed interval from 0 to 1. Okay, so in the following, we consider as our Banach space the continuous functions on the interval 0 to 1, on the closed interval 0 to 1. So those are functions from this interval, let's say to C, if you're doing the complex Banach space version, such that f is continuous. Okay, so this is a nice and very important Banach space. If we equip it with the supremum's norm, the subnorm is of course the norm which we have here, and this is a complete normed vector space, so it's a Banach space. Okay, and of course this is infinite dimensional. So this means we can find infinitely many linearly independent vectors. So for example, I mean you can just take the monomials. So x is infinite dimensional. So it's really an interesting one where Heine-Borel is not valid. So this is infinite dimensional. So e.g., if I take just the monomials, let's say x squared, x to the power 3, and so on, those are linearly independent. So I'm not finding a basis of this space which consists only of finitely many elements. Okay, so this means this is a big Banach space, and according to what I said before, if I'm looking on the unit ball, the closed unit ball, in this space, so the set of all continuous functions which have norm, subnorm less or equal to 1, then this is a big space, and it's not compact. Okay, and maybe it's good. Okay, so this means that the unit ball, so the set of all f in X for which the subnorm is less or equal to 1, so this is not compact, and this means it's very big, and I can find easily sequences there which have no convergent subsequence, and I can find sequences where the elements have to stay away from each other. And maybe an easy example are exactly those monomials here. So e.g., if I take x to the n as my sequence, this has no convergent subsequence. Of course, I mean x to the n is in a unit ball. The subnorm of each function x to the n is less or equal to 1. So this is really a function for each n. X to the n is a function in a closed unit ball, and yeah, I'm claiming this has no convergent subsequence. And why? Why is this the case? Because actually, I mean the sequence of functions x to the n, it converges, but not in the uniform norm, but pointwise. So maybe a reason to see this is that x to the n, this converges at least pointwise, but it converges to a discontinuous function. So namely x to the n, if x is in my interval, and if it is different from 1, then x to the n goes to 0. Okay, so it goes to 0 if x is between 0 and 1, but 1 not included. And if x is equal to 1, then of course 1 to the n is always 1, so it also converges to 1 for x equal to 1. Okay, so this xn converges pointwise to this, so every subsequence of course also converges pointwise to this. But if we now assume that we have a uniformly convergent subsequence, then the limit of this must necessarily be this limit, this pointwise limit, because I mean uniform convergence implies in particular pointwise convergence. So every subsequence of this, every uniformly convergent subsequence of this would have to converge to this function. Okay, but we know that the limit of continuous functions, the uniform limit of continuous functions must also be continuous. And of course, this function here is not continuous. Okay, so this shows really that we have here very easy and concrete example of a sequence which cannot have a convergent subsequence, even though it is in a bounded and closed unit ball. Okay, so this means there is really a lot of space in this unit ball, so that functions can, infinitely many functions can stay away from each other very easily. And then, they don't have to cluster. Good, okay, but I mean, of course, so the whole unit ball is too big. So this means if we want a compact set, we need something more than just closed and bounded. And that's what we will try to understand. Okay, so there should be an additional property of our functions, sequence of functions or sets of functions, which imply that the set is compact. Okay, and so in order to understand this, maybe let us look on convergent sequences. So if I have a convergent sequence, then this sequence should have a property which compact sets should also have. Okay, so let us consider as a motivation for the additional property which we need for compactness. Let us consider a sequence, let's say fn, which converges to some function f. So this function clusters here, and the idea is that actually the elements in my sequence are eventually very close to f. So this means the sequence should inherit some properties of the limit function. Okay, and actually the sequence should have a global kind of property which comes from the fact that there is a limit object. Okay, maybe this is a bit unclear what I'm saying here, but okay, so let us consider this situation. If I have a convergent sequence and then I want to see that I have a very strong property for the elements in this sequence. So namely I have a strengthened version of continuity for those guys. Okay, so namely, so let us consider this. So I'm looking somehow on the continuity of my functions. This means, of course, each function fn is continuous, and continuity means that I can estimate the difference between fn at a point x and at the argument y as being as small as I want if I only make x and y close enough together. Okay, but now I want to see that because I have a limit for those guys, a continuous limit for this guy, I can make somehow this estimate here uniform in all the ends. Okay, so why is this? So I mean, in order to estimate this, I will actually compare the functions with f. I mean, the usual trick. I know those guys are close to f, and I want to use a property of f for doing my estimate. So I estimate this here by comparing fn of x with its limit, f of x, then looking on the corresponding question, namely continuity in the limit, and then also comparing the fn of y with the limit. So I have here f of y minus fn of y. Okay, so the usual trick. I mean, I'm just putting in f of x, subtracting it, adding it. The same for y, and then by the triangle inequality I can do the estimate like this. Okay, and I want to see, continuity asks me that I can make this smaller than epsilon. So let's say I want to make those three terms, each of them less than epsilon over 3. Okay, and of course, I can do this. Of course, this guy here, I can make smaller than epsilon over 3, but only, of course, if the n is big enough. So for n bigger than a capital N. So the fn's converge uniformly to f. So this means from some index on, let's say capital N, this distance here is less than epsilon over 3 for all x, because it's uniform convergence. And here, of course, the same. So this means I can make this less than epsilon over 3 if the n is big enough. Good. Okay. And now, for the n's which are big enough, I can estimate this guy here. I mean, this guy here has nothing to do with the n, so actually I can also make this smaller than epsilon over 3 if I only make x and y close enough. This is now the continuity of my limit function f. So if I make the distance between x and y, let's say smaller than a delta. That's the definition of continuity. For any epsilon, I find a delta such that if the arguments are closer than delta, then the values of the functions are closer than epsilon. Okay, so for the continuity of f tells me if I want here epsilon over 3, there is a delta which I call delta f, because it of course depends on this function f. It's a continuity of this function. Good. Okay. So this means I have here an estimate for the distance between fnx and fny, which somehow is not really independent of n, but it's almost independent, because you see, if the little n is big enough, then I have all those estimates here. I mean, this estimate here depends only on the limit function, and here I know I have this estimate for sufficiently large n. Okay, and now the property which I want to have for my collection of functions here is that actually this estimate here is independent of the n. Okay, so at the moment it's not independent, because you see, if n is large enough, I can just choose this delta f here, the delta of the limit function. Okay, and then the fn's must respect this delta. Okay, but of course there are smaller n's for which this is not true, because then I don't have those estimates. Yeah, okay, but those are only finitely many, because I mean from some point on here I have this estimate here, and then I have finitely many indices for which I need an additional estimate. I have to use an additional delta. Okay, so furthermore, we have additional conditions, but only finitely many. So we have additional, but the point is finitely many conditions. So namely, the elements in my sequence for which the above estimate cannot be used is for n equal to 1 up to the capital N. So for those, I have to look separately what is my estimate between the x and the y. So I want to have this smaller than epsilon, but of course because f1 is continuous, I also find a delta. So x, if I make this smaller, then the delta corresponding to f1, and that's what I call delta 1. So there's a delta 1 such that this is smaller than delta 1. I can also make this smaller than epsilon. The same for f2 and the same for f3, where I have different deltas, and so on up to the f capital N minus 1. N minus 1 of y. This can be also made smaller than epsilon if I only make the difference between x and y small enough, namely smaller than a delta, which depends on the function which I consider here, so I call it delta n minus 1. Good. Okay, but then you see I have now for all indices of my sequence, I can make the distance between, let's say, fm of x and fm of y smaller than epsilon if I only choose the x minus y small enough. And I can actually say how small I have to choose this, and I can present a delta which does not present on the index of my function anymore. So that's the main point which I want to see. So thus we have for all m, for all indices of my sequence, that I can make the distance between fmx and fmy smaller than epsilon whenever I make x minus y smaller than the delta. But now the point is this delta does not depend on the m anymore. Of course, for each fm I find a delta for which I can achieve this, but I say I can find one delta which works for all the elements in my sequence. So namely the delta which I take now is just the minimum of all the deltas which I need to make the estimates above. So I mean the first estimate, this is one which I can make for all m which are bigger than this capital N, and there I have to use the delta. There I only use one delta, namely the delta of the limit function. So I take here the minimum of all possible deltas, so I need the delta of the limit function, and this enforces this inequality for all indices which are bigger than n. Okay, and then I have the indices which are smaller than n, and for those I have to use their corresponding delta. But those are only finitely many deltas. That's the main point. So I take here also the delta 1 up to delta n minus 1. Okay, and this is the minimum of a finite number of positive numbers, so this is still a positive number. Of course, without this estimate against the f, I could take the minimum of all the deltas of all the functions in my sequence, but then I would have the minimum or the infimum of an infinite sequence of numbers, and this might be 0. So of course it's important that I get here something which is bigger than 0. And so you see I get here a continuity condition for the elements in my sequence where I can use the same delta for all elements. For a given epsilon, for each given epsilon, there is one delta which allows me to make this continuity estimate for all the elements in my sequence. Okay, so this is a stronger, this is stronger than just saying that each element in my sequence is a continuous function. But the continuity criteria, namely the delta, is actually the same for all of them. So somehow the elements are tied together. They have a similar behavior, and that is what we call equicontinuous. This is a property of the sequence. So each element in the sequence, of course, is continuous, but they are continuous somehow in the same way. Or the continuity is essentially governed by, in this case, by the limit functions. So essentially, I can take the data from the limit function for having this stronger property here. So that's this property here. That is what is called equicontinuous, or in German gleichgradig stetig, and that's actually the property which we need of a collection of functions if we want to have that the corresponding set is compact. So in a sense, this says that the elements in my sequence are not just more or less arbitrary in a big, let's say, unit ball, but somehow they must have properties, they must be tied together in some sense. Okay, and this is exactly what we need. So I will now write this down as the official definition, equicontinuity, and then I can formulate the theorem of Arzelà-Ascoli, which will say that compactness in this Banach space of continuous functions is really the same as closed bounded plus this equicontinuity.